Hi everybody. So, what is your what was your last visit to Ukraine? How do you like it?
My last visit to Ukraine, the last time I was in
Oh,
Ukraine
first,
was,
first, first, first.
oh,
Excuse.
first. Okay. So the
Yes.
first time I was in Ukraine was last year in October. I was invited to speak at a conference in Kiev at the Outsourced People Conference. And for me, it was very cold. But then I actually came back to Ukraine in winter, so I had no idea how cold it would be. And I loved it. I mean, it was really great to meet, different people, really educated people, but also just, normal people outside of the IT industry. The buildings were beautiful. I love the food. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited to be coming back again.
That's cool. And how do you feel about um, Ukrainian IT specialists? How they are like in USA, like in Turkey, or they are something different?
Oh, of course they're different. I mean, everyone is different everywhere, but people are also the same everywhere too, you know? It's what I really like about working with Ukrainians is that they're very straightforward. Um, so they say what they mean. And there's not as much need for kind of like small talk or it's if yes means yes and no means no. Um, and I think, there's definitely a very high level of education and creative thinking too. I really like that.
And what do you don't like about Ukrainian IT specialists?
Oh, I don't like that question. I don't like that question. I think, um, I think it's just there's sometimes there's a mismatch between what the other person on the interaction might be expecting in terms of communication. Um, and unless, both the US person or the European person and the Ukrainian person in that connection are understanding of each other, there's a big potential for miscommunication. So I think maybe learning a little bit more about that, it's always good to learn about the other person's culture, what they might expect from you, because nobody's really right, you know.
Okay, thank you. I asked you these questions because I think that our um, the different problems we meet while working on our sales and marketing are
Hmm.
connected with what people we are, how we think,
Hmm.
how we do, and how we are represented on the from the multicultural aspect.
Hmm.
It is no wonder that most of Ukrainian mm, IT specialists first visit in other countries by work or maybe on vacations. There are we travel less than uh, people of another countries do. I mean developed countries like Canada, USA, Australia, and this is why we have some misunderstandings on our marketing messages. And maybe
I don't
talking.
think, but if I can interrupt you, I don't think it's just Ukrainians though. There's um, like only 5% of Americans have a passport. Okay, so for if I don't know enough about Europeans to make like broad generalizations, but if we're just looking at Americans, like they haven't necessarily traveled anywhere either, and they think that their way of doing things is normal and correct, and it's not necessarily, you know. So I don't know about Canada or Europe. I get the impression that Europeans travel a little bit more, but that's also because other countries are so close by and flights within Europe are very cheap. Um, Even still though, for someone from France traveling to Belgium or someone from the Netherlands traveling to London, there's still more in common. Um, But Americans don't travel that much. They really don't, and they still think that their business customs ought to be normal, or that's the way that things ought to be, you know. So that's one thing I notice, is that because Ukrainians are very realistic about setbacks, that they think that it's like all their fault and they're doing so many things wrong, and they're not.
Thank you. That's nice. And now we're starting our webinar, and I talk with our listeners. Всем привет! Мы начинаем вебинар от Дженнифер Робертс от конференции ITEM 2016. В этом году конференция пройдет 2-3 июня в Днепропетровске в культурно-деловом центре Минора. Масштаб конференции в этом году невероятный, потому что конференция выросла практически вдвое. Мы ожидаем 1000 участников. В этом году впервые на конференции появился программный комитет, чтобы пригласить самых лучших спикеров из США и Европы. В том числе мы приглашаем специалистов, которые приезжают впервые. Это прародители Agile, Том Гилб и Юрген Апелла, топ-3 спикер топ-3 спикер по Agile в мире. И кроме того, у нас будет очень сильный поток Sales and Marketing, который модерирует кофаундер конформата Анастасия Новикова, и Дженнифер Робертс — это один из самых ведущих спикеров этого потока. Дженнифер выступает в Украине не впервые, и многие уже слышали о ее докладах, посвященных маркетинговой стратегии и выстраиванию правильных мультикультурных продаж, когда мы сталкиваемся с тем, что нам нужно отсюда продавать в США, в Европу, в другие страны. И сегодня мы поговорим о том, какие сложности и проблемы бывают у маркетологов и продавцов в процессе выстраивания стратегии, и, возможно, каждый из вас найдет ответы на свои вопросы. Вы можете задавать дополнительные вопросы в чат. Вот. Так. Тарас, подскажи, пожалуйста, как задавать вопросы? Правильно.
Для того, чтобы задать вопрос, вам необходимо либо открыть интерфейс Google+, который был получен вами в специальной ссылочке в рассылке, и справа будет специальное меню, в котором возможно задать вопрос, лайкнуть вопрос вашего коллеги. Выбранный вопрос отобразится в правом верхнем меню, и спикер будет на него отвечать предметно и очень конструктивно. А если вы выбрали ссылку, которая ведет на YouTube, то на самом видео слева в углу вам нужно будет нажать на аннотацию, на которой написан текст «Присоединиться к трансляции», и вы попадете в аналогичное меню, где вы также сможете задать свой вопрос.
Кажется, я забыла не самое важное. Меня зовут Мария Гибалова, я отвечаю за маркетинг конференции ITEM. Я буду получать ваши вопросы, выбирать самые интересные и полезные и задавать их Дженнифер. Ну что, давайте начнем. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Дженнифер Робертс – это специалист, который ранее работал в Google Academy Account Strategist. Совсем недавно последнее место работы Дженнифер. Она вернулась на родину, в Турцию, и там создала международную компанию e-commerceовую, которая занимается продажами товаров легкой промышленности и одежды. В своих докладах Дженнифер использует весь опыт, который она получила в работе с компаниями самого разного масштаба, и B2B, и B2C сегменты, и фокусируется на онлайн-продажах, инструменты контент-маркетинга, SMM и SEO. So Jennifer, let's start. And the first question what I asked you when we prepared to the webinar was about what the key factors we have to take in account when we prepare strategy, marketing strategy for promoting our companies to USA and other countries.
Well, I think so much of marketing nowadays is based on pull marketing, on bringing people in versus shoving your message onto them. So it's the difference between crafting a really great article or piece of information or figuring out if there's a free version of whatever your project is that you can let people try. And in order to get that right, you have to really understand your target market. The only way to do that is by researching them and by talking to them. So now more than ever, issues of intercultural communication, what people expect from the service process, what for them means seeing that your product or your service is reliable, quality, trustworthy. The first step for all of that has to be research and understanding your customer. You can read as many blogs or listen to podcast episodes about marketing tactics, demand generation, hacks, different things to try. But if you don't understand what it is that people want, what the pain points that you're going to solve, then you're wasting your time. So all of this, go-to-market strategy, it's not that you develop a strategy and then fit it to the market. It's that you first figure out the market, you talk to as many people as you need to, you read about their motivations, their concerns, and then you develop a strategy based on that.
Thank you. And what fast methods to test our hypothesis on targeted audience we can use? What do you recommend?
Well, the first method is actually very old school, but it's the one that's worked best for me, which is talking to people. A great example of this is when I started developing with Equipa what now became the Equipa Academy. The long story is that my first trip to Ukraine in October of last year, after I gave a talk on intercultural sales cycles, someone came up to me at the conference. Second day, I think I was waiting to go into the center of Kiev to do some sightseeing, and they asked me if I was available to give in-person training at their company, and I said yes. But what struck me was that I hadn't tried to make anything. I definitely didn't pitch that during my talk, but this came into my lap. So I figured, okay, there must be some demand here. How can I address this? I talked to hundreds of different teams from around the globe, from Ukraine, Czech Republic, Latin America, India, Southeast Asia, and talked to them not about, would you be interested in paid trainings? I asked them, what are the biggest problems you face in your business? And based on that, I figured out that one of their biggest problems is communicating with Western clients, figuring out how to make that work. And based on what they told me, we developed it into the Equipa Academy, which is like an online portal for teams from around the world to learn, to take courses with us. And part of that content will also be featured at my speech at ETEM and the workshop as well. But now we also offer them. It's turned into this huge program of like one-day course offerings, two-day course offerings, in-house stuff. And I never knew that it was going to turn into that. I just sort of sensed a need and collected a lot of information by talking to people. So that's probably the number one thing to do. Figure out who your target market might be, and talk to as many of them as you can. If they're in another country, talk to them on Skype. And it takes a lot of reaching out to people. In a way, you're kind of asking them to do you a favor. So figure out if there's something you can do for them in return. But talk to people, and not just 5. It's too few. Not just 10. It's too few. You'll start noticing patterns once you start talking to 20, 30, 50, 100. That's number one. Number 2 is looking at searches in the aggregate. So if you can use Google Insights, Google Search Insights, you can look at searches related to your product niche to find out what people are asking and what problems that they have there, or what are their frustrations. So a good example, again going back to my business Equipa, is how did I know that communication, intercultural communication was an issue? Just by looking at problems outsourcing IT development, or problems communicating with my team from country, and that country could have been India, Ukraine, Philippines, whatever. Over time, you start to notice that they have things in common. So the same thing would also be true for your product niche. And the third thing to do when you're researching your target market, trying to figure out what pain points you can solve, I would recommend actually looking at a lot of industry blogs, social media, things like that. Always try to be tapped into what they're reading, where they're spending their time. So, for example, if your target sector is fintech, always be reading Forbes, Bloomberg, the news outlets where your target market learns about trends in their market are going to be very important to you.
Thank you very much. And about building the strategy, what the period of time do you recommend to plan to? Like a year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? What is enough period?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say because I don't think it's that you just build strategy and then you're done with it. In my own business, I operate it almost as a cycle. So I rely very heavily on interviews because I think that people, it's the shortest way to get an answer to your question is to ask another person. We forget that nowadays, especially in IT, because it's a very technical field, and so we think about what's the hack for this? What's the tool that I can use? How can I type into my computer and find the answers? And the answer is right in front of you. It's the other person, usually. So I'll set a goal for the number of interviews that I want to get through, maybe 50 or 100. And that, that can take anywhere from a month, 2 months. It really depends on how much time you give it and how quickly you can go through it. And then I'll develop something initial, a strategy or an MVP, and constantly be going back to that, be testing my assumptions, and when they're proven wrong, going back and asking people more questions. I think if you take too long to build your strategy, then you risk it not being relevant. If I just spend 1 year developing a strategy and then I go to market, by the time I'm done, things may have changed. And I will have lost the opportunity to test that strategy, to do a lot of A/B testing in the market. So I favor a shorter amount of time developing strategy, more time interviewing people before I formulate my strategy, and testing afterward to see if my assumptions are correct.
So if I understand you right, you recommend to plan result-oriented cycles and to creating the goal, try to plan how much time we need to realize this goal, to make the sales happen. Yes? Thank you very much. And what channels of marketing do you recommend for, for example, outsource IT business in Ukraine?
Well, I think that there's a huge underutilized opportunity in terms of content marketing, specifically if we're talking about either lead generation or demand generation. I think that not enough Ukrainian IT outsourcing firms are taking advantage of this. Some of them are. I think that if you can produce content that answers your target market's pain points, that's based on, actually showing that you can provide a solution instead of just saying, here we are blah, blah, outsourcing, and we are the best, and we have 10 years of experience. If you can actually talk about the solutions you build, talk about, the pains that your customers' businesses are suffering from and what the solutions could be, that's a great way to create, better more juicy marketing opportunities for your company, and then to also create rich content as well. You know, something like this is a great example. Anyone can do a webinar for their business or their product, or videotape an interview, share that on YouTube, create a blog article around that. So I think content marketing and demand generation for content marketing are underserved opportunities. Pay-per-click a little bit, not so much though. And I think that if you invest more in building rich content, then a lot of these interactions like that people traditionally find very unrewarding, like sending out cold emails, things like that, they can become a lot easier to win if you've already got a big library of content that you can lead with to show people that you have resources for them already.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And what about return of marketing investment in content? When we talk about, yes, you get me, yes? When we talk about webinar, it's like not so free, but it's not much expensive. But when we talk about professional video or infographic or great article on topic like big data researches in modern technology, it's all costs and it's expensive. How we try to understand if if from it's great or bad?
Well, you know, experimentation is great for this. Link tracking, I mean, you can track which links get opened, which get read, and which turn into warm leads and closed deals for you. I wouldn't necessarily invest so much in a program and trust that results will be there. Something that I like to do is A/B testing all the time. But for example, if you can invest in building a great blog article, maybe a video to go along with it, when you share those, always use Google Analytics tracking on the links so that you can figure out, you know, where incoming traffic to your website comes from. Have your sales guys do A/B testing on their cold emails as well. So 50% get this great piece of content, 50% don't. Track which ones turn into warm leads. Track which of those warm leads turn into closed deals. I think that the fact that this strategy is already commonplace means that it's worked for enough people and become a marketing trend precisely because it does work. But yeah, you definitely have to test it out in your own business. Don't go all in, but I do think that it will lead to greater results.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And what is your feedback on modern innovations in Facebook streamline? Like when we don't see the post from brands we don't like, and even from the users who are our friends, what we can do as marketers to overcome that?
Well, that's very interesting. I have to say, I was surprised after, you know, living outside of the United States and coming to Argentina and then to Turkey. I was surprised that people in IT outsourcing use Facebook for marketing, because in the United States, especially for tech, people don't really use Facebook for marketing. Facebook is considered more like B2C. It's a great place for clothing brands and retailers and restaurants to reach customers, but people don't necessarily go on Facebook trying to find their next outsourcing partner. So, and I understand that in Ukraine, India as well, they use Facebook for marketing, and as an American, that was a big surprise to me, even having worked in tech. Latin America doesn't use Facebook for B2B marketing as well. So don't worry about algorithm changes in Facebook if you're trying to generate leads for your business, first of all. Second of all, if you're still worried about that, focus more on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where businesses are, at least in America. Europe, I don't know quite so much because every country is so different. Finally, if you're really, really determined to market on Facebook, and you don't believe what I'm saying, that in the United States, people use Facebook to share cat videos, which they do. I mean, it's not a professional network in the United States, but if you still really want to market IT outsourcing software services on Facebook for U.S. customers, I would focus mostly on your targeting, on making a really relevant audience for each post if you're promoting it. I would think about geo-targeting more if you're promoting these posts. So if you've already done the work, most of what I say when I'm giving courses, whether it's through the Equipa Academy, whether it's at ETEM, it's usually the first piece of information that's the most important. So if you've already done the work, talking to people, understanding their pain points, you'll know who to target on Facebook. You'll know that you need to target people in a certain area who have certain factors in common. You'll know that you need to create relevant content for them. Facebook is always tweaking its algorithm, and now they're trying to show more organic content to people. You can still promote it a little bit, but if that means that you need more organic shares, try partnering with other organizations to spread your content. Previous clients are a good example if they're comfortable sharing your content. Building a network of business contacts in these other countries is also very important. People that are in content partnerships with you, so you collaborate with them on their content. Equipa is in a number of these partnerships as well, so I will. I'm perfectly happy to partner with someone to do a webinar if they will later share my blog articles. Content partnerships are probably the way to go for Facebook. But again, in the United States, Facebook is where people put like cute pictures of their kids. So I don't know that it's necessarily the biggest network for finding leads.
So professional network in US is LinkedIn, and what else big sites, maybe Upwork, like you recommend to use? Maybe you know some.
Yeah, you know, it really depends on the size of deal that you want. I know that some businesses are perfectly happy serving smaller customers, and so Upwork is fine for that. You could also use, I mean, there are a number of different websites, but if you want like big, juicy contracts, like you know, $2,000 and above, you can work with websites like ours, like Equipa, or you can really leverage your network of contacts. So if you've already been to these countries, maybe you've been at trade shows, work on building relationships with people that will turn into work for your company. If you're not able to go to places like these, if for some reason, I know it's very expensive, especially for newer companies to travel to a conference, to have someone employed in one of these countries. There are a lot of networks of on-demand consultants who will work with you. So, for example, one of them is Walkabout Collective. I'm in touch with the founder, Antoinette Forth. So, if you're interested in them, I can put you in touch. But there are plenty of others where basically you partner with these consultants as being part of the solutions that they sell. And you can also partner with them to sell you as a solution to new customers in return for a commission.
Thank you very much. And my last question about what we do when we are a product company and we're not sure that our product already have demand, and we have to create the market and demand. What we do? We do content marketing, and what else? Okay.
Research, because you need to find out what are the needs already out there. Again, talk to people. It's a great way to find out what is on their minds, what bothers them. You can conduct surveys as well, and see if you can offer like free content in return off of your website. So that's a great way to trade a white paper, an infographic, or a guide in return for collecting emails that you can follow up with on interviews. You can do a very simple 3-question survey that they have to fill out before they get your free content. Talk to people, collect their responses, collect as many responses as you can. Once you figure out what their actual pain points are, then when we're at the phase of demand generation, we start thinking about information products that answer their pain points. So what is an article that I can write? What is a free download that I can create? What is a light version of this product that people can try that answers these pain points? Further on down the line, I mean, there are a number of like tools and things that I like to use. I use Crystal. Crystal is a service that lets you, let's say I have a really important contact in B2B marketing and I need to figure out how to communicate with this person. With Crystal, I can analyze their communication style based on their public communications and figure out how, like, are they more open? Do they need exciting kind of like language? Do they need me to speak only in terms of facts? I use Grammarly to check my grammar. It seems very basic, but I'm a native speaker and I even need it, so everyone needs it. And I also use Hemingway to make sure that my style is very concise. And you know, after that, it's really just a question of following up, experimenting, finding out what content is the most effective with your target market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And let's go to the questions from our listeners. Like,
okay.
Sales and marketing are the great pain in our work. Like, we have less problems with creating a great product than with selling it. And we have a question: is what is the best way to reach the customer? Emails. I think that's me. I think that we can reach customer via Facebook, and we talked about Facebook, that it's like not for business.
Not in the United States, maybe in other countries, but
let's
in
talk about
the United States, people don't really use Facebook for business.
So what about cold emails, cold LinkedIn message, Skype requests, messengers? What do you think of that?
Okay, so in the United States, again, this is a country that's already dominated by inbound and content marketing, and people will still do some cold contacting, but the wrong way to do it is saying, for example, hello Jennifer, my name is Olha, I am the business development manager for XYZ outsourcing. We have over 10 years of experience in the industry and we are the best. You should choose us. Get in touch with me if you want to work with me. Oh, by the way, if you're not the right person, please forward this email. That's the wrong way to do it. And the reason why is because, first of all, this is a country where people expect more personalized attention. They prefer to find your business instead of you finding them because they feel like they like to research, compare alternatives. That's why content marketing is so important, because you need to position yourself at the beginning of their search versus later on. They don't necessarily, it's also a show me culture. So if you're telling me that you're the best, but you're not showing proof of that to me before I work with you, then I have no reason to believe you. I mean, just like, you know, Maria, if you had never met me before and I ran into you on the street and I said, will you give me 100 hryvnias? I promise I'll pay you back. You don't know me. You have no reason to believe me, right? If I say, give me 100 hryvnias, this is my credit score, and here's my friend, she loaned me 2,000 hryvnias last week and I paid her back, believe me. You might still be a little bit skeptical, but you would at least, find me a little bit more believable. The same thing with these cold contacts. What I see so many people, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries doing is they send this kind of like copy-paste email. Sometimes they don't even bother to put my name in there, telling me how wonderful you are, you should work with us. Oh, by the way, if you're not the right person for this email, please send it on to someone who is. And I ignore them. And I don't send them on to the right person if there's another person, because I get so many of them. And I also don't have any evidence that they are really the right person to work with. And so if I have to do all the work for them and I have hundreds of these emails every week, then I just don't answer any of them. The right way to do cold contacts is taking some of the content that you've already developed, like video. I mean, what we're doing right now, this is going to be recorded and it'll be on YouTube, and we don't have an expensive camera crew for this, or blog articles are very low cost as well. Taking some of these content pieces that you've developed after you really understand their pain points and establishing a cold contact if you have to, but in terms of their pain points, talking about their business and the solutions that you can provide for them, showing them proof that you know what you talk about in that same email with a link to content. This is a lot stronger, and it makes it easier for them to investigate you and form their own opinion of you. Statistics have shown that companies that do this, companies who blog, companies who provide cold contacts with free resources and information showing that they know what they're talking about, receive up to 40% more warm leads than companies that just do this copy-paste, very cookie-cutter, cold email contact. So yeah, I do think that cold emails and cold LinkedIn messages can be effective if you do it the right way. I wouldn't spend too much time on Skype contact requests, because again, like, people can find that very strange in the United States. Cold calling can work as long as you are persistent but also very friendly. This is a culture where service is done with a smile, and it's kind of positioned in this way of we're becoming partners. It's not that you're selling to me and getting something out of me and I'm getting something out of you. It's that we're partnering together to help both of our businesses. So if you do cold calls, go into it with a very win-win attitude. If it's just on the phone and you don't have to see the other person, try to smile, just to change the tone of your voice to make it a little bit more lively. Like I always show people, there's an exercise I do in my workshops. So if I'm on a phone call right now, you can't really see whether or not I'm smiling. But if I smile right now and I'm talking, and then I smile right now and I'm not, you can still hear a difference in my tone of voice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's nice. And so the next question will be very practical. It's about the LinkedIn strategy. What approach do you apply for targeting leads on LinkedIn?
Well, myself on LinkedIn, I usually focus on content creation again. So I focus on creating lots of different kinds of content depending on our target market. I'll share that via my own profile and via Equipa's page, and I'll also share that content in groups. Part of what I do as well is I always accept every connect request. I reach out to people and connect with them, but when I do, I always include in the message, something that shows that I've investigated them and I'm interested in what their business is doing. So I always lead with the other person. I think it's almost like a universal human trait that people are very flattered when you show interest in them. They're much more likely to believe that you're interested in working with them. So I'll say, hello, you know, I'm Jennifer, I'd like to be connected. I noticed you're doing this, and this. That's really interesting. Here's an article that I wrote recently that might be interesting to you. So I'm positioning myself right from the beginning as being a helpful and valuable resource for them, sharing something that could help their business. And this takes a little bit more time. You do have to spend you know, somewhere between like around 5 minutes investigating every person that you connect with. You can also use, there are some tools that help you target you know, the right followers, the right people on social to connect with. But the point is that even though I'm spending a little bit more time investigating someone, I'm using my time more wisely versus just sending everyone the same copy-paste, connect request. From there, I'll usually look at their, if they accept my request, I'll usually look at their company profile. I look at, you know, what sphere their business is in, and I'll just ask them about their plans, you know, in their role. I'll tell them, you know, yeah, it's really cool, congratulations, you know, like, I noticed that you've been up to these latest activities, you know, what are your plans for this year? How, is there anything I can help you with? That's a really strong question to lead with, instead of, you know, we are the best industry provider of QA testing services, or we're the best web development company in blah, blah, blah city. You know, what can I help you with is a great question to start with.
That's a cool answer. And from my experience, I have a question for you about LinkedIn connections. When we add as a contact the person that has no connection with us, and that was from my experience when I was afraid to write something personal, because I was afraid that person which gets my invitation will guess that I'm going to sell something and not adding at all. But when I just add them, and in a month I send them in the case message like, we're the best, we do the things, you may believe what is your problems, they always answered me. And what about first connecting? What we do? We write something personal, or we just seem that we are just adding you as like to have 500 plus contacts on LinkedIn. What is your advice on this?
I think the best thing to do in all of those cases is to A/B test. And that's because everyone has a very different communication style. The strategies that I recommend, I've seen work in my own businesses, and I've seen them work in other people's businesses. But maybe that doesn't work for you, because the thing is, too, when I have a very different profile on LinkedIn. I mean, my name is very obviously American. You know, it's I have connections from a bunch of different places, so it's not always obvious to the person that I might be selling something to them, right? Whereas if, you know, you are I don't know, Taras from Lviv, you know, and you're connecting to someone in the B2B tech sphere, it's pretty clear that it's a connection for business, especially if it's a connection in another country. I think that you should always A/B test these things. So try it for a month, do what I recommended, you know, test 50% of your connections with zero message, 50% with a slightly personal message. See which one gets the most accepts. Test, you know, the cookie cutter response with a slight personal message. see which one gets the most responses. Even if you're doing a cookie cutter message, though, you should position it in terms of the help that you can provide to them. And I really do recommend including a free resource, a link to a blog article, something of that sort.
That's nice answer. Thank you. So the next question will be very philosophical, maybe. It's like if you have to give one universal advice on sales, maybe 2 or 3 words, what it would be? What words that would be? To describe the best advice on sales and marketing in 1 to 3 words.
Don't take anything personally. That would be my best advice. And I apologize for the noise. For those of you who don't know, I live in Turkey, and it's time to pray. We live right across the street from a mosque, so even I have all of the windows closed at home, but sometimes it happens. Don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally because you know, so often, you know, maybe your warm lead didn't follow up with an email, you know, not because they're not interested or because you did something wrong, but because life happens. Or maybe you did do something wrong in their point of view, but it's just because you come from 2 different cultures and you have different styles of communicating and you didn't know. Or, you know, maybe the other person is just not a very nice person. That happens too. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they needed to walk out of your contract for personal reasons. Maybe someone in their family got sick. You really never know. So don't take anything personally in business. Don't take anything personally in sales and marketing. And I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give one other piece of advice. My other piece of advice would be always be experimenting. Always be trying new tactics and doing smart, controlled experiments. You know, 50% this way, 50% that way. Only test for one variable. So those are my 2 pieces of advice. Don't take anything personally. Always be experimenting.
Jennifer, it's a great advice from my previous sales career. It's like very truthful and connected with real life. And our last question will be maybe about traditional direct sales. And what do you think? Is it necessary for salesmen to be a good-looking, attractive person? How this influence on like our sales results?
So I think that I think attractiveness doesn't hurt, but I think it's not required. I mean, it's true. So many psychological studies have shown that when we're confronted with someone who's attractive, we're naturally kind of more interested in what they have to say. This goes to like a very primal part of ourselves, you know, 100,000 years ago, when the only 2 things we needed to worry about were food and reproducing, right? So we're biologically hardwired if there's someone attractive to kind of like, oh, wow, you know? But if that very attractive person doesn't have any substance behind that, then it's useless for sales and marketing. So I think more important than being attractive is being able to listen, being intelligent enough and comfortable enough to think on your feet, being creative, knowing how to experiment, how to respond to objections, having empathy. Empathy means being able to understand the other person's feelings and motivations. You can have all of those skills or a combination of them and be an excellent salesperson. You can be just a pretty face, man or woman, and not have any of them and be terrible. So, no, I don't think it's important. It might not even be required to be physically attractive for sales. There's so many examples of people I know who aren't conventionally attractive, but they've got a really special energy about them where they they listen to you, they speak to you, and you can tell they're really connecting with you. You know, versus people who are maybe conventionally attractive, but they don't really care about what you have to say. Especially for the American market, someone who can help the other person feel like they're really being understood, like they really understand their needs as a customer, will always have more success. And you don't need to be attractive to do that. You just need to have empathy and a genuine desire to connect with someone.
Thank you very much. It's a great answer, and maybe that was our last question. And now I will close our webinar. A few minutes I talk to our listeners. Всем большое спасибо за внимание. Мне кажется, я сегодня сделала для себя несколько открытий, несмотря на то, что мы проводили всякие разные эксперименты в маркетинге. Я надеюсь, что вам тоже это было очень полезно. Мы напоминаем вам, что 2-3 июня мы ждем всех на докладе Дженнифер в Днепропетровске на конференции Item. Проверьте свою почту. Сегодня до 12 часов вы можете купить билет на конференцию со скидкой. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And
thank you.
We had a good time. See you in the conference. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.